Red Light Logbook here for D. Gray Man's Noah's Ark Part 2. And we start off with Tiki Meek and Road actually crying over the fact that Barak has just died. And they both point out that it's not actually them who's crying, it's the Noah inside of them that is crying. So even though they call themselves Noah, technically they are just normal human beings born in the modern day, being possessed by the genetics of someone who lived 7,000 years ago. So that white void person with the giant smile screaming, "Never forgive the innocents," over and over again to Barak while he was fighting, that was the Noah ancestor that is taking over his body. The same thing happened with every other Noah. They are normal people who live in today, but they're being possessed by their ancestors' blood. That's when the twins kick in the door and ask for some tissues from Road, and both of them look like they're crying black tears, but it's just their makeup running, because they like to dress like rock and rollers. While they're all putting themselves back together after the death of their comrade, Road then says that Barak was a pitiful Noah. And that's because each Noah takes on an aspect of the Noahs. The twins take on the aspect of bonds. Tiki Meek is pleasure. Road is the dream. And unfortunately for Barak, he was the wrath of the Noah. As such, he was the strongest Noah, but it also made him a pure puppet of the Noah, actively trying to destroy all exorcists and all innocents that he saw. While all the Noah are guided on their pursuit for revenge against the innocents and their hatred for it, he was the most slave-like to it. Meek then decides to change the subject by looking at the twins and asking, "Hey, didn't the Earl order you two to kill Cross?" And the two respond by getting really pissed off, because obviously they failed. The funny thing is, for some reason, they took the chicken with them. The chicken that was hanging out with Cross and he left behind. And I guess they made friends with the chicken because it isn't just hanging out with them, it's also getting mad at Tiki Meek. I don't really know how to explain that. That's how it is. While they're currently yelling at Tiki Meek, they end up dropping a thing of papers. Road picks it up and realizes that it's a bunch of bills. And apparently, this whole time, Cross knew he was being followed by these two, and so he would always rack up massive bills with women, booze, and hotels, and then always make sure to sign that the two men that were following him were going to pay his bills for him. So this whole time, as they were chasing after Cross across the world, he was dropping a larger and larger debt on them. As you can imagine, Road finds that to be hilarious, but then she also notices that there's a third name that was supposed to pick up the debt in case these two idiots didn't, and she goes, "Oh hey, this third name, just so you know." And then that's when we cut over to Alan's group. They're walking through a hallway, wondering when Kana's gonna get there, when the hallway actually begins to crumble and fall. Yeah, so they're already taking too long. They tried running the best they can, but they can't outrun the collapsing of the Ark, and so Crowley decides to chug a bottle of Akuma blood, which then gives him increased strength and speed to be able to carry everyone out of there to a safe point. The safe point happens to be the Noah's Archive. It's basically a giant library. And waiting in the library are the two twins, who basically introduce themselves as they always do, but they declare that they do not actually care about any of them, not even Alan Walker, but they hate Cross. And so they're going to get revenge on Cross by killing his student. And they just start shooting at Alan. They yell "blue bullet," and when they start firing off new rounds, they end up shooting off ice rounds. Of course, Alan knocks it all away and attacks them back, saying, "Well, if you're after me, then I'm guessing that means my master's still alive." They're actually surprised that Alan could fight back as well as he did, and so they think, if we took him hostage, we could maybe ransom him off to his master. And Alan's like, "No, that would never work." Alan has no faith that his master would actually come and save him. That's kind of sad. They then continue to shoot off their blue bullets at Alan. He dodges, the books around him actually get hit and start freezing, so Alan thinks they might have an ice ability, but that's when they yell out "red bullet." They fire another round as a giant fireball. And it's like, okay, that's not their ability. Alan's able to stop it, but he isn't able to do anything about it, so Crowley and Robbie then just knock the fireball back at the twins. They seem unfazed to the point where they just say "white ball" and then fire another bullet, and the fireball basically vaporizes into nothingness. So obviously everyone assumes that their guns are some kind of insane weapon, but Riro, the umbrella, is in the background laughing like, no, that's not their ability. Those are just ordinary guns. You'll never figure out what they can actually do. And Ruru starts to mock them for being stupid, but then he remembers, wait, didn't you have orders from the Earl to go after Cross? Why are you here? And the twins respond by shooting the shit out of the umbrella. Then yell at Ruru, saying that the Earl said Cross might be going after the Ark, so they're just going to wait for him here. But in the meantime, they're going to go after his student and make him pay back the debt. And they pull out all of their bills and demand that Alan pay them the 100 garros that Cross left them to pay. And apparently 100 garros in US currency is like 20 grand when this manga was written. As you can imagine, everyone's dumbstruck by the fact that Cross left the enemy a debt that they had to pay for him. On the other hand, Alan just gets pissed off and refers to the 100 Garros as nothing but small change and nothing compared to the debt that he had to pay off. Alan then screams that his master is a true demon, and dealing with that kind of debt is just something you have to deal with. This time, not just his allies, but even the enemy is stunned by what Alan just said about his own master. And the twins then get even more pissed and start shooting at Alan even more. Alan dodges all their attacks, and they scream out "Purple Bomb," fire off that round, and when Alan actually catches up to them and slams on the ground, the two end up being dolls. Lin Lee then starts to freak out, because when she looks down, the entire floor is covered in keys. Alan then checks his person, and he realizes he's missing the key to Rogue's door. As you can guess, Alan is super depressed by the fact that he lost the key. Lin Lee tries to cheer him up, but that's not really the main issue here. The main issue was the purple ball that was shot at everyone. It hit him in the eyes. Everyone has this splotch of purple paint on their face, and this is causing them to see hallucinations. Those mountain of keys that are on the ground, while they can touch them and feel them, and probably even taste them if they started to lick it, which they don't, that's all imaginary. It's an illusion created by the twins. There's only one real key just sitting on the floor. And on top of that, because of the illusion paint, the twins are also invisible at the moment. And anytime they attack, like they shoot fireballs, the red ball at everyone, and what they see is being attacked from every direction from like 5 or 6 fireballs. But the thing is, they only shoot 2 at a time because they each only carry 1 bullet each. So you're basically having to fight an invisible opponent who can also produce a bunch of fake attacks while hiding the real attack within the mess. So they dodge the first fireball, except for Choji, the normal human who ends up getting burned on his shoulder, and it's bad. Like half his back is set on fire. Alan then decides to extend his fingers and basically starts whipping around, trying to attack any direction he can. He completely misses, and they fire their green ball at him, which ends up putting him in this gel-like thing where he's basically suffocating to death. Robbie burns it away with his fire stamp, and that's when Crowley's like, "Shh, let me hear." Yeah, Crowley has enhanced senses, so even if he can't see them, he can still hear them. And so he's focusing on tracking them down, while Robbie decides he's going to go after the key. The reason for this is because he's a bookman, well, Bookman Jr. And as a result of this, the only way you can become a bookman or the apprentice to a bookman is if you literally can remember everything perfectly. Robbie remembers every piece of that key, every scratch, every piece of dirt on it, everything. He has a photographic memory, and so he can figure out which is the real key amongst all the fakes. Alan asks him to figure it out in 1 minute, but Robbie's like, "No, that's impossible. I know which key is the right key, but I can't do it that fast." But that's when Alan gets shot with a freeze ball again, and then Crowley comes out of nowhere, grabs Alan, and then chucks him in a direction. He actually ends up hitting the twins. Yes, he used Alan as a weapon as a way to attack the twins. He then tries to get them while they're on the ground, but they're able to escape after that. He got close to grabbing them, though, because he was holding a bunch of their hair in his hand. He even shows it to Alan. The twins haven't seemed to realize that Crowley knows where they're at, and so they actually let their guard down, and this allows Crowley to actually get up close to them. Forces them back, put them in a position where Alan is then able to grab the both of them. Now, Alan can't see either of them, he's just following Crowley's orders, and so when he's holding them in his hands, he can feel them, it just feels weird because he literally sees nothing. Now they're pinned. This gives Robbie a chance to activate his wind stamp, where he sucks up all the keys, and he stands in the middle of the storm examining all of them to find the right one. The twins are just staring at Robbie, and he goes, "Oh, that's Bookman Jr. Okay, it makes sense why he's here." And then Alan tries to ask him, "Wait, what does that mean?" But the twins ignore him because they have no interest in telling Alan anything. Crowley is about to finish off the twins when all of a sudden this sand monster comes out of nowhere and starts attacking Alan. He's forced to let go of the twins, so they escape, and then this sand monster also attacks Crowley, and the two of them are just sucked up in its maw and its multiple arms. It's a huge mess, and they're just trying to fight it off as best they can. After they get eaten by the sand monster, that's when Lin Lee tries to run towards them, but her legs, of course, don't work. She starts yelling at them to start moving because they're her legs, they should listen to her, but it isn't working. She's just stuck. And of course, the twins then take the opportunity to take her hostage. This, of course, pisses off Alan and Crowley. They smash apart the sand monster and start charging towards them to save Lin Lee when the Earl attacks them. Obviously, this isn't the real Earl. This is just another one of the twins' things that they make. And yes, while this isn't the real Earl, it's still extremely powerful, and both Crowley and Alan are having a hard time fighting it. And we finally get to learn what the twins' ability is. It's imagination. They can produce anything they want that they can imagine. But the catch is they both have to imagine it the exact same time, which is why they have to always call out their attacks before they actually make them, because they're signaling to each other what they need to imagine at that moment. The twins then trap Lin Lee into this bubble thing. She continuously screams to get out and starts punching her way out. but it's not working. The twins get mad at her, and I'm not making this up. They threaten to rape her if she doesn't shut up. She responds by then decking him in the face, because the bubble she's in is actually elastic, and so it can stretch around her fist. And so the dumbass was stupid enough to get close enough to her to punch. The Earl is just beating the crap out of Alan and Crowley, and so the twins are mocking them for being weak and they can't win. That's when Lena Lee says, no, they'll win because they're strong, unlike you, who's nothing but a child throwing a tantrum. And she's not wrong. The way they fight is very much how kids would fight. Anyway, as soon as she says that, that's when all of a sudden Robbie finds the right key, and they know he did because he opens the door to the next room, and literally everything that the twins created gets just sucked through the door. The Earl, the purple paint that's causing the illusion, all the fake keys, everything is just sucked out. That's when Alan and Crowley scream, we can see you, and just deck the twins. The twins now are pissed, and the two declare they're going to get serious. The two start to sing a very morbid nursery rhyme, and then once they finish, they shoot each other in the head. And after this, they actually merge into one being. Because apparently, Jas Davy was Jas Davy originally, and they split into two creatures. So technically, they're not twins. They're just one being split in two, and now they've refused. And their first move is basically to kill Crowley. I mean, they slam him straight into the bookshelf, and he's just covered in blood. In fury, Alan attacks Jas Davy, but he completely blocks his attack and then just starts to torture Alan. Right before he actually is killed, he's then saved by Crowley, who is now back on his feet. He's pissed off for two reasons. One, he just got nearly murdered. And two, Jas Davy keeps calling him a vampire, and he keeps saying, I'm not a vampire. Obviously, Crowley's sensitive to that because he spent his entire life being bullied, being accused of being a vampire when he wasn't just a normal human. He starts to fall on his feet when Robbie and Alan grab him. After getting Crowley up on his feet, Alan then looks at his hand, and it's covered in blood. So he still has a gaping wound inside of him from when Jas Davy attacked him. Crowley then asks Robbie how many bottles of blood he have left, and he only has 3, which means he's running on empty, basically. Jas Davy attacks again. He knocks Alan away. He goes for Robbie. Robbie hits him with his fire stamp, but it has no effect, and he actually smacks Robbie. Jas Davy's hair then transforms into basically needles and stabs straight through Crowley, so he's just gored again. And everything Alan and Robbie do, it just has no effect. Jas Davy is kicking their ass, and Jas Davy basically reveals that when they fuse, their imagination becomes even stronger. So they didn't just do a 1+1 by fusing. This was like a multiplication. They're vastly stronger than they were before. Crowley then jumps onto Jas Davy, holds him down, and screams to Robbie and Alan to take Lena Lee and get through the door. The room then starts to fall apart. Alan's like, wait, no, you have to come with us. And Crowley's like, with my wound, I won't be any use in a fight. And if there's an enemy in the next room, I won't be able to protect Lena Lee or Choji. The only ones who can do that are you two, so you have to go. And while he's screaming all of this, Jas Davy's hair is once again turning into needles and just stripping through Crowley's body. He's just getting gored over and over again. But Alan finally accepts that this is what needs to happen, and so the four of them go through the door, leaving Crowley and Jas Davy behind. Crowley finally collapses. Jas Davy then gets pissed off, says, whatever, I'll just hunt them down. He starts to go after Alan and them through the door, but then he gets hit in the head by a bottle. And back on his feet is Crowley again. He calls them brat, and Jas Davy calls Crowley a vampire, and the fight begins. As you can imagine, Lena Lee has no interest in leaving Crowley behind. In fact, she demands that they go back and help him, but Alan gets her head on straight and says, no, we need to keep moving forward. We need to have faith in both Crowley and Conda. They'll return to us. They put their trust in us, and we can put our trust in them. They will come back. Don't worry. As for the fight between Crowley and Jas Davy, the first thing Jas Davy does, he picks up the bottle that was thrown at his head, and he asks, was this human blood? He licks a little bit of it, and he starts gagging, and he goes, did you just drink Akuma oil? You're just disgusting. You really are a monster. No wonder your friends want nothing to do with you. I bet they all think you're a monster too, and that's why they left you here to die. And so Jas Davy is basically just tearing down Crowley, saying that everyone thinks he's a monster and they actually hate him. And Crowley's only response is, that sounds like something they probably said to you. And this makes Jas Davy pissed. He's like, oh, so I'm spot on that. I guess people do call you a monster. And then Jas Davy starts throwing a tantrum like a child, like he always does. Starts attacking Crowley while screaming, no they don't, no they don't, no they don't. And while pounding the shit out of Crowley, he then starts calling him a monster again. Then smashes him between 2 stars that he creates, pentagrams. And they actually start to flatten him, basically like a sandwich. Crowley tries pushing back, but at the same time, he's being crushed. It also seems to be electrocuting him in some way. And eventually, Jas Davy is just able to crush the entire thing flat, and all you see is just splatter of blood from Crowley. Now, they assume they killed him, obviously, but even after that, they continue to mock Crowley by saying, well, to kill a vampire, you actually got to pierce their heart with a stake, so maybe he's not dead. And they're basically just making a joke out of it, but that's when Crowley starts to speak and says, piercing my heart with a stake isn't going to kill me. No, not after I sucked the blood of the woman I loved. And after she died, after I killed her, no one else is allowed to call me a vampire. And he just kicks his way out of that star thing that they made. And he declares, since he is not a vampire, he is an exorcist, he does not need a coffin. He is only here to kill them. Then Crowley speed blitz Jas Davy, which surprised the hell out of him because up to this point he's been on top, hits Jas Davy as hard as he can with his fists, and it actually does hurt Jas Davy, so this also surprises him. When he sees Crowley's hands, they're completely crimson in blood. And so now Jas Davy's trying to put the pieces together. He's like, wait, what? Did he get stronger because I made him angry? No, that only happens in like manga. So how is he able to keep up with me now, and how is he able to hurt me now? This doesn't make sense. Jas Davy then sees that in the pentagram where Crowley was flattened, there's a bottle, a different one from that he had before, and he finally puts the two and two together that this guy gets stronger when he drinks Akuma blood. Crowley also realizes he's kind of screwed because he's down to one bottle. That means he has to end this now, otherwise he's gonna die. The two then end up in a fist fight where Jas Davy's using his hair and Crowley's using his crimson claws now, and they are just ripping each other apart. Crowley begins to realize that if he drinks the last bottle, he'll be able to win, but he notices that the pentagrams of the poisoning of an Akuma is starting to go up his face. So he realizes that his body normally, thanks to his innocence, is able to neutralize the poison of an Akuma. But because of that massive wound he got from Jas Davy at the beginning of this fight, his body is focusing on recovering that, and it's not diluting the poison fast enough, and so if he drinks that last bottle, he's going to succumb to Akuma poisoning and die. So as the fight continues to move forward, Jas Davy ends up getting the advantage and just continues to beat the shit out of Crowley. That's when Crowley realizes, okay, I might as well just drink the blood, because if I'm going to die by this guy's hands anyway, I might as well take him down with me. And as he tries to go for the last bottle, that's when a strand of Jas Davy's hair wrapped around the bottle jumps out of his cloak. Yes, Jas Davy is able to control his hair even though it's not connected to his head. The hair jumps out of his cloak, flies downward. Both Crowley and Jas Davy go for the bottle, and right before they hit the ground, Jas Davy wins. He grabs the bottle and slams Crowley into the ground. He then, once again, starts to mock Crowley. That seems to be something that Jas Davy likes to do. He's kind of a prick about that. And he says, you know, if you had this, you actually probably would have beaten me. So at least he's honest about the fact that Crowley was going to win. And then he just downs the entire bottle of Akuma blood. Crowley then starts attacking Jas Davy, and none of his attacks are even working at this point. He's just too exhausted, too bloodied, and just beaten down. And Jas Davy's like, you know you can't beat me now without the blood. And Crowley's response is, I am going to try to stall you until this room is downloaded, and then we both die and fall into the abyss. And Jas Davy's response is, yeah, I'm not going to let you do that. Slams Crowley into the ground, smashing the ground to pieces, then picks him up. An Iron Maiden appears with Spike, and he encloses Crowley in the Iron Maiden. But Crowley gets a second wind after being crushed by Spikes and an Iron Maiden, rips the thing open. This surprises Jas Davy, and then Crowley reaches out to grab Jas Davy's face, but then all the strength in his body disappears, and he's crushed again by the Iron Maiden. And then Jas Davy once again calls Crowley a monster, but this time it wasn't really an insult, it was more like he was just that strong of a guy. Then, as Crowley's life is slowly slipping away, he then hallucinates Elendil. He basically asked him, what is he doing? Didn't you become an exorcist as an excuse for killing me? Isn't your job to protect those kids? Doesn't that matter to you? Crowley's response is to laugh and say if she's there to take him to heaven. And her response is, well, maybe you can go to heaven, but I never existed. I was a machine created by the Earl. If you go to heaven, you go alone, which, as you can imagine, is very depressing for Crowley to hear. And then Elendil gets him back on track by telling him, what about these kids? You said you were going to help them. These are the first humans to ever treat you as a friend. And we actually get to see not just the first time Alan and Robbie interacted with Crowley, because we already saw that. We get to see the first time Crowley meeting Lena Lee, because that was skipped over in previous arcs. And the first time they met, Crowley was actually somewhat nervous to interact with Lena Lee because he assumed that she would think he's a vampire, he's a monster, because that's how he was treated by everyone. But Lena Lee is Lena Lee, and she actively holds her hand out and, well, treats him like a friend. And so this is really sweet because this is the first time that Crowley really did understand that there were people out there who weren't going to treat him like a monster. Because obviously Alan and Robbie, they saw the whole thing. They understood what happened. But this was someone who wasn't there. Lena Lee had no involvement in the Haunted Castle arc. And so this was just a big deal for Crowley to meet someone on the outside who treated him like a person. And so Elendil said, if you die now, you'll be alone again. You want to stay with these kids, right? Then you should go to hell and back with them. Crowley then thanks Elendil, tells her that he did in fact love her, and that he appreciates that she did this for him at this moment, even if she isn't real. Then all you see out of the Iron Maiden is this giant flooding of blood just spray out of it. It launches at Jas-Devi just as he's about to walk through the exit, grabs him and drags him back into the room. Jas-Devi then attacks Crowley, slices his arm off, but it just regenerates. And that's when Jas-Devi realizes something. Crowley is covered in blood. His entire body's red. And he's like, how did he get out of the Iron Maiden? When he looks back at it, he can still see Crowley's arm hanging out. And he realized, no, what Crowley did is that he abandoned his body. He activated the innocence in his blood, controlled it, and is currently just a blood person. And so I'm just going to call him Crimson Crowley. So Crimson Crowley then shoves its hand through Jas-Devi's body and sucks up the blood that Jas-Devi drank before. And so the final part of this fight is about to begin. And Crimson Crowley really is Crowley. He's not just some innocence on autopilot, because Crowley is able to see everything that Crimson Crowley is able to see. He just can't feel any pain because he's no longer in his own body. And he finds that it's actually easier to move. And the reason for this is because he's just going on pure willpower now. He doesn't actually have to think or have motor functions or muscles or anything like that. He's literally just blood moving in the shape of Crowley. Jas-Devi also remembers what the Earl said before, that the innocents will do anything to defeat them, for it is the devil. So Jas-Devi finally realizes what he meant by that. What happened next is kind of absurd. Jas-Devi attacks Crimson Crowley. Crimson Crowley splits in half, and as two half beings, then starts to beat the shit out of Jas-Devi, bites his arm, throws him against the wall, and when Jas-Devi stands up, his arm literally has the words innocence written across it, and it's actually beginning to rip itself apart. So Crowley injected his blood into Jas-Devi when he bit him. Crimson Crowley then fuses back into one person, screams, I will protect them, and Jas-Devi says, we will do this together, and it ends with a giant punch where the two collide into one another, creating a shockwave that basically destroys the rest of the room. And the victor of this fight is Jas-Devi, actually. Miranda falls to her knees because Crowley's time disappears from her. We then see Jas-Devi walk to the exit, sit down, split back into his twin form, and then they both just pass out and fall. Crimson Crowley is clearly done. It can't really fight anymore, but it sees the twins have passed out, and so goes back into Crowley. And with the last bit of consciousness Crowley has, he then says, well, at least I know the others were able to get away. I'll just meet up with them later. And he passes out as well. And based on what Miranda said, his time has disappeared, heavily implying that Crowley just died here. And that is where we will end this video. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more D. Graham and other things. Thank you and have a great day.